This meeting is being recorded.
Okay. All right. Thanks everyone for joining us. Again, we're going to be learning tonight in memory of Rachel's mother, Chana Bas Yaakov Yisrael HaKohen. So thank you to Rachel and Judah for sponsoring this shiur in her memory, and her yortzeit is again, beginning tonight, tomorrow. So all right. Hopefully this learning will be a good, will bring merit to her neshama and everything else that her family. That her descendants keep on accomplishing in the world. Okay, now what I want to talk about tonight is, we'll talk about the parsha. All right, I want to analyze the question in the parsha, which I'll tell you in a minute. But what's useful about this is that it's also going to get involved in a very, very important sort of practical issue. All right, in terms of the Sheva mitzvos b'nei Noach, the 7 mitzvos that apply to everyone in the world. All right, so we'll also have a certain practical ramification for how we understand that. So it's an important topic. All right, and we'll go through, we'll see that there's 2 major approaches to it, and we'll try to understand each approach. Now, the basic question over here, okay, the story that the Torah tells us is that the Shechem, right, the prince of the city called Shechem, so he sees Dinah, who's the only daughter that the Torah mentions of Yaakov. All right, according to the rabbis, there were other daughters, but he sees this girl, Dinah, Yaakov's daughter, and he basically wants her. All right, he's not the most refined fellow, to put it lightly. All right, so he basically takes her, he kidnaps her, he rapes her. All right, and he's holding her hostage. So he comes to discuss with her family. He wants to marry her, and the Torah says that basically Yaakov's sons fool him. All right, they tell him that if everybody in his city circumcises, so then they'll all be part of one clan, and then he can marry her. And the people in Shechem go and do that, and Yaakov's sons go, and then on the 3rd day, right, when everybody's recovering the worst, so they rampage the city, they kill everyone in the city, they kill all the men in the city, all right, and okay, that's how they punish basically the city, and they take back their sister, they bring her back home, and the story ends that Yaakov is very upset with them. Okay, and Yaakov is so upset that, I don't know, 4 parshas later, whatever it is, and the last parsha of Bereshis in YIFH, all right, when Yaakov is dying on his deathbed, he's still upset at Shimon and Levi, the 2 brothers that did this, right? He's still giving them rebuke about what they did. Okay, so that's how upset Yaakov is about what they did. Now, okay, now what we want to, let me start with the basic question over here. Okay, we understand why Yaakov is upset, right? Because yes, Shechem should not have taken this, kidnapped Dinah. But on the other hand, they killed out a whole city over here, right? So that was certainly not something that they should have done. But the question is, how could Shimon and Levi have done something like that, right? These are not barbarians. I mean, these are not murderers. So why are they rampaging, going through a city, killing all sorts of innocent people who don't deserve to be killed? Well, in other words, what are they thinking, right? The prince of the city kidnaps their sister, which is wrong. So they go and kill the whole city, right? They massacre the whole city. So this seems like a very big problem. I mean, Shimon and Levi, we're talking about 2 of the greatest, leaders, 2 of the founders of the Jewish people, right? So why are they just massacring an entire city that doesn't deserve it? So in order to answer this question, we're going to go through now 2 major approaches, okay? And we're going to see that this is going to have a very important halachic ramification as well. Okay, so the Rambam answers this question. The Rambam says the following. There are, right, as we know, there are Sheva mitzvos b'nei Noach. There are 7 mitzvahs that are commanded to the whole world, right? We Jews have 613, but the non-Jews, the whole world has 7 basic mitzvahs, which are basically the 7 pillars of morality. Okay, so God insists the rest of the world doesn't have to keep Shabbos, right? They're not even supposed to. They don't have to keep kosher, right? They don't have to keep the ritual laws, but they have to keep the basic moral laws. So what are those laws? So there are laws like don't worship idolatry, don't curse God, against immorality, adultery, theft, eating Eiver min hachai, eating like a limb of a live animal, murder. All right, those are the basic laws. Now, one of them is called dinim. Okay, dinim means laws. So what are dinim, right? What does it mean, dinim? So the Rambam said something very interesting. The Rambam said that the dinim, laws, means to enforce the other 6. So basically, there's really only 6 laws, and the 7th one is a requirement to enforce the other 6. Okay, so in other words, they have to set up courts. They have to have a whole, judicial system set up. So if someone steals, if someone murders, if someone commits adultery, if someone commits idolatry, there has to be a court system in order to punish this person. Okay, so that's what it means, dinim. Now, says the Rambam, you know what the problem in Shechem was? Says the Rambam, that's why Shimon and Levi killed Shechem, the whole city, because they saw one of their members steal Dinah. He kidnapped Dinah, which is a violation of theft. Okay, we'll get back to this in a minute. He committed theft. He kidnapped someone, and they didn't judge him, right? It doesn't say in the Torah that they judged him. They didn't set up a court. They didn't bring him to trial. So since the whole rest of the city didn't judge him, so they all deserved the death penalty. They all violated this one of the commandments, and the punishment for those commandments is death. So because they all violated one of the 7 commandments in not judging someone for disobeying another one of the commandments, so that's why they deserve to die. Okay, so the Rambam is saying something very radical over here. He's saying that that 6 of the commandments, there's a death penalty if a person does it, right? So let's say a non-Jew commits adultery, they would get the death penalty. If they commit murder, they would get the death penalty, right? Again, all of this is talking about when the Jews sort of have control, when they're living in a Jewish community, right? When they're doing their own thing, so then we don't really, we obviously don't have control to do anything. But there's all sorts of limitations on this. So we're just talking about the theoretical law, right? I don't want to get into the details right now, but I'm just trying to explain the theoretical law. According to the Rambam, if a non-Jew violates, let's say, adultery or murder, then they get the death penalty. But now there's something very radical. This is a radical step. Anyone in their community who sees them do that sin and doesn't judge them for it also gets the death penalty. Okay, so this is really, this is like a very, very wide, broad category. We're going to see this is a very controversial idea. But according to the Rambam, that's how he makes sense of this story in the Parsha. Shechem deserved the death penalty for stealing Dinah. But the rest of the people in town deserved the death penalty for not judging him for stealing Dinah. Okay, so you can see how the Rambam's theory would snowball very quickly, right? Because basically, if you have any community where people are committing these 6 sins and they're not judging them, so then a lot of people are going to quickly deserve the death penalty. So, okay, so this issue, the Ramban in his commentary on the Torah, he quotes this Rambam, and he says that this is very, very problematic. All right, and the main problem that he says is if the Rambam is correct, that there was a real legitimate reason for killing the whole, city of Shechem, then why is Yaakov so upset? Right? Well, why is Yaakov freaking out at the end of the story? And he says to them, "How dare you do this? What are you doing?" Right? They did what the halacha is. Says the Ramban, you know what? Even if you're going to say that Yaakov was scared, right? Maybe that was the halacha, that they were supposed to kill everybody. But Yaakov was scared that now that they started a war, the other, the neighboring communities are going to kill them. So maybe he was scared. Says the Ramban, that still doesn't answer it, because like we just said, Yaakov is still mad at them on his deathbed. So decades after this story, when they had survived, they were not in any danger, Yaakov is still angry at them. So you see that Yaakov's anger at them is moral. It's not because he was scared. It's a moral anger, right? He doesn't think that they were right. Now, if the Rambam is correct that there's a real legitimate reason to kill them, so then why would Yaakov have been so upset? All right, that's his question. Now, the Ramban himself is not sure. It's unclear, okay? Did Yaakov think that nobody should have been killed? Or did he agree that Shechem should have been killed, but he didn't think the people of Shechem, the rest of the city, should have been killed? Okay, so Yaakov's position is not 100% clear. He definitely did not believe that the whole city should have been killed, but it's not clear whether Shechem, the guy who committed the atrocity himself, deserved to be killed. Okay, so that's unclear. But either way, again, right, the same question is going to be here. Why, according to the Rambam, why was Yaakov so upset at his sons for doing this? Now, the Ramban makes another point, okay, and this is a very important point that we're going to discuss a little bit. The Ramban says we don't even need to come up with all these forced readings or forced ideas as to why the people of Shechem deserve to be killed, right? Because who are the people of Shechem? They're idolaters, right? Everybody in that time is idolaters. They commit adultery, right? He quotes a pasuk that says that people committed adultery in those times. So if you're telling me that they were being killed for violating one of the 7 mitzvos of the non-Jews, you don't need to say that it was dinim. You could say that it was idolatry or adultery, right? So of course, when Shimon and Levi killed them, of course there was a justification over here for what they did. So again, now let's return to the issue, right? Given that it's very clear that these people, that there was some justification in killing them, why is Yaakov so upset? So the Ramban says the reason Yaakov's so upset is because it's not their job to enforce this, right? In other words, he and his sons shouldn't go around enforcing, the rules of the Torah. I mean, they can't be responsible for everybody what they're doing. All right, so that's why this is not, even though there was some justification for what they did, but it didn't really totally make sense. Again, like I said, when the Jewish people are not in charge, when we're a small minority, so obviously we're not going to go around enforcing all these rules and getting into fights and wars all the time. All right, so that's the Ramban's question on the Rambam. Okay, now I want to turn to some proofs for the Rambam, because even though the Rambam's theory is somewhat difficult, but there are some proofs in his direction too. Okay, so first of all, in the Torah it says that they killed the men and they took the women captive. The women of Shechem they took captive, so they didn't kill the women. So now the Meshech Chachma points this out. All right, he points out if the justification for killing the people of Shechem is that they violated idolatry or adultery, so why'd they only kill the men and not the women? Right? That doesn't seem to make a lot of sense. In other words, why are they leaving the women alive? According to the Ramban's idea that their justification was because the people are committing adultery or idolatry, so why didn't they kill all the adults? So that indicates, like the Rambam, that the problem was specifically that their lack of a court system. So in the olden days, who's responsible for the courts? Obviously the men, right? I mean, we're talking about a society thousands of years ago, right? The women are not lawyers. They're not police. There's no police women. So obviously the people responsible for enforcing the law are the men. So according to the Rambam, that the problem here was that there was no law enforcement. So it makes sense that only the men got killed and not the women. All right. So that's how he says it. Now, there is a problem with this approach too, because he seems to say that women are not obligated in all 7 mitzvahs of non-Jews, right? In other words, according to this approach, women, at least in the olden days, would only have been obligated in 6 of the commandments, but they're not obligated in dinim, which is to enforce the other ones. All right, which is not true. I mean, so far as we know, men and women are equally commanded in all of the 6 and all the 7 commandments. All right, so there is an issue, there is an issue over here. Now, the second issue, according to the Ramban, is if Shimon and Levi's justification for killing the whole city of Shechem is that they're idolaters or adulterers, so why aren't they going around killing every city, basically, right? In other words, why aren't they trying to kill the whole world, right? Because a lot of people are idolaters back in the day. So if their justification is based on those issues, right, again, if the debate between Shimon and Levi and Yaakov is that Yaakov feels like they can't be enforcing the laws to everywhere, and Shimon and Levi are gung-ho about, killing idolaters, so why aren't they killing everybody, right? So it sounds like, so again, the fact that they only attack the people of Shechem sounds like the Rambam, that their specific problem is with the dinim of Shechem, that they don't enforce the laws properly, and that's why they chose that city. Now, I'm not answering the central question, right? The Ramban still has a very good question, which is if they're going to war to kill people who don't keep the 7 mitzvahs of non-Jews, so why aren't they going to war with everybody, right? And in other words, the same question is true, that a lot of people are idolaters back in the day. All right, so okay, my point with this, I'm just going through some of the highlights, but as you can see, right, there's a lot of questions back and forth. And there are some problems with both of these issues, but both of these approaches. Now, let me just make one last point. Okay, according to the Rambam, and then I want to go to a second approach. According to the Rambam, right? What sin did Shechem do? Because Dinah was a single woman, right? She was single. So he didn't do adultery. He had relations with the single woman. So what sin did Shechem do that he deserved the death penalty, and the whole city deserved the death penalty for protecting him? So here there's basically, so the Rambam says that it was theft, right? It was theft. Now, what does that mean that it was theft? So I think the simplest explanation, and again, both of these, I'm going to say two explanations. They're both in the commentators, but I think the simplest one is that because he raped her against her will, so that was a form of theft from her, right? He stole from her because he in other words, he took her, she didn't give consent for what he was doing. So that rape of a virgin was a form of theft. Whereas let's say he had seduced her, right? Let's say she had gone willingly with him. So then he would not have actually violated anything. He wouldn't have violated theft. He wouldn't have violated adultery, and he wouldn't have gotten killed. All right. So the whole problem here was that he coerced her. There is another interpretation of this, which is that since she was a young woman, she was a girl. So in the olden days, or under halacha, a young girl, the rights, let's say the financial rights to her marriage, belonged to the father. So by taking this Yaakov's daughter, he stole from Yaakov. All right. So okay, those are two possibilities. But again, it's not so clear exactly what he did. I mean, he obviously did something wrong, but it's not. You have to figure out exactly how he violated theft. All right. Okay, so that is explanation number one. Okay, the Rambam's approach. Again, the key point for the practical purposes is that according to the Rambam, the seventh mitzvah of dinim is to enforce the earlier six. So any non-Jewish community where they don't enforce the earlier six, everybody becomes responsible for those violations. Okay, so obviously the person that violated the commandment is responsible for that, but anyone that doesn't judge him according to the Rambam is responsible. Okay, now the Ramban rejects this idea. Okay, he does not believe that that's a relevant idea. And again, right, it's a very, very severe sort of view of this, because according to the Rambam, it quickly snowballs how many people are responsible, for one person's sin, right? Almost in an unfair way. So the Ramban does not like this idea. Okay, so again, as we saw, the Ramban has like a two-pronged approach here. Okay, the reason why it was justified to kill the people of Shechem is because they were idolaters, they were adulterers, so they deserved the death penalty according to halacha. Okay, but now the question is, why did Shimon and Levi do this? Right, so we already raised the issue that why are they choosing one city? Right, if they're trying to enforce these laws, then they should be attacking every city. So why are they only choosing this one city of Shechem? Right, and the other issue is that Yaakov is very upset at them. Right, why is Yaakov so upset at them if what they're doing is justified under halacha? So the Ramban says a whole different approach over here. Okay, the Ramban says that basically this was an act of passion. All right, they got upset. Right, they were furious. They were livid at the people of at Shechem, that he stole their sister, that he raped her. Okay, they were livid at him. They were totally they were passionately angry. And the Ramban says that they wanted revenge. Okay, I think here he means a little bit more like justice. Okay, they wanted justice for their sister. So what did they do? They went and they attacked the people. They attacked the city of Shechem. They killed out the whole city. Okay, and again, like I said, even though there was partial justification for this halachically, but really they were motivated by their own desire for revenge and their own passion, their own anger. So that's why Yaakov was upset at them, and that's why he remained upset at them for the rest of his life, because he felt like they had done something so, that was immoral. All right, it was basically immoral because they were so angry. All right, and Yaakov did not approve of their act of violence or, vigilantism. He did not approve of what they did because he felt like it was motivated by passion, not by reason. And that's why he was so angry about them. All right. In addition, not only did they go and kill people that Yaakov thought were basically innocent, right, or on some, not totally innocent, but innocent enough, right, innocent enough that they shouldn't have been killed. But in addition, they also made a treaty with them. All right. So Yaakov felt that once they made a treaty with them, and they indicated that they were gonna, that they were gonna be friends, that they were gonna be, that they were gonna build a community together. So to violate their treaty and to go attack people who thought that they were trying to, be friends with them was a terrible, terrible sin from Yaakov's perspective. Okay, so that's how the Ramban explains what happened in the story over here. That according to again, we got to put together a few different points, right? On the one hand, Shimon and Levi did have some justification for killing them because they were idolaters and adulterers. On the other hand, their primary reason for doing so was passion and revenge, which made Yaakov very angry at them because he felt like they were not guided by reason. And in addition, they had fooled the people by creating this false treaty, okay, which Yaakov felt that they had gone back on their word, which was very wrong. Now, the Ramban does pose the question that Yaakov knew about the treaty, right? He heard about the treaty. He knew that it was a fake treaty. So why is he so angry when they ended up killing them, right? He knew about it. So the Ramban says that Yaakov didn't understand that their plan was to kill them, right? He thought that the plan was to weaken them and then to go bring Dinah back home, but he didn't understand that they were planning on killing them, all right? Or again, maybe he thought that they were only going to kill Shechem himself, but he didn't think that they were going to kill the whole city. So basically, Yaakov was blindsided because he didn't realize how that they were going to totally violate their treaty. He thought that there was a different plan. And most of the brothers, right, the other, 9 brothers or whatever it was, they did have a different plan, right? They were intending to do something different. It was only Shimon and Levi who were the extremists of the group, and they went ahead and killed them. So that's why Yaakov was upset at them. Now, I know I keep repeating this point, but I just want to make this clear, right? We're not saying that Shimon and Levi were like the worst guys ever, a bunch of murderers, they have no regard for human life. They're just like total barbarians, because they did have some logic to what they were doing. It was wrong, and the Torah makes clear that they were wrong, and Yaakov was vehemently against what they did, but they're still great men. They're still righteous men, even though they did something wrong. Because again, and I tried to explain this, there was some reason for what they were doing. Now, the Ramban then adds in something which is very interesting. He quotes that there's a historical source. It's not from the rabbis, but there's a historical sort of like legend, book of legends, that tells that there were actually 3 battles with the people of Shechem, and the Jews were in danger of losing. So Shimon and Levi were actually going to lose. And Yaakov had to step up. He had to get his his weapons out and go to battle in order to help his sons. So this reinforces why he was also angry, because he actually had to go to battle in order to help his sons because they were losing. So they made a bad plan, and Yaakov had to bail them out. And the Ramban quotes that the Medrash makes reference to this, right? The Medrash talks about Yaakov having to go to war also. So it doesn't tell the whole story, but it does make reference to it. Now, none of this appears in the Torah. Right? The Torah says nothing about Yaakov going to war, and the Torah doesn't say anything about there being a big bloody war. It just seems like Shimon and Levi went in and just killed everybody in the city. So the Torah omits this whole story, but according to the Ramban, there are historical traditions that there was a bloody war over here, and it wasn't so clear that the Jews were going to win, and Yaakov had to help them out. All right, so that's why Yaakov was. That's the reason for all of Yaakov's anger at his sons, at Shimon and Levi. Now, let me end with one last point in the Ramban, because again, to come back to our practical point. If the Ramban, I want to just end with this one issue of what does the dinim mean, right? What is this mitzvah that the non-Jews have to have laws? What does that mean? So we saw the Rambam's interpretation that it means to enforce the other 6. But we also saw the Ramban, right? The Ramban doesn't like that because he thinks it's too broad. To hold everyone accountable for one person's sins is too extreme. So the Ramban says that the mitzvah of laws means something different. Okay, the mitzvah of laws means that the non-Jews have a responsibility to have a full set of secular legislation. So they need to legislate property damages, stealing, any financial laws, right? Which is what we have in America today, right? There's tons and tons of financial laws that regulate business, that regulate private dealings, that regulate damages, right? Torts. I mean, we have tons and tons and tons of laws that are on the books that regulate all of the financial laws, right? And that comes from British law, from Roman law. I mean, the non-Jews have been doing this for many centuries, right? And they've been doing it well. They really do legislate secular financial laws in a way which is appropriate. Okay, so according to the Ramban, the dinim laws does not mean that everybody's responsible for one person's sin. It means that anyone who steals or damages someone else or takes away someone else's property violates dinim. Now, there is a mitzvah, which is part of that for the non-Jews to have a court system, right? Of course, you have to have courts in order to enforce the law. You have to have police. You have to have law enforcement. But according to the Ramban, there's no death penalty for that. So even though the non-Jews must have a court system, that's a mitzvah. But if they don't do it, if they're negligent in that, then they're not going to get killed. A person is only, the Ramban is very adamant on this principle that a person only gets killed for what they themselves do. They do not get killed for what someone else does. All right. Now, again, I think that's a very good perspective. I think probably a lot of us feel comfortable with the Ramban's idea, right? That everyone, we're not going to hold everyone responsible for someone else's theft or someone else's murder. Right. Again, they should be judging them, and that's a mitzvah. But that's not a reason to have killed the whole city of Shechem. Now, let me end with one question on the Ramban. If the mitzvah of dinim is to enforce financial law, then how is that different than gezel, right? Theft, right? Aren't those two mitzvahs the same thing, right? One is to not steal and one is to enforce financial law. So what's the difference? So basically, there's two possibilities here in the commentators. One is that dinim refers to non-financial theft. Right, so let's say kidnapping someone is not a financial theft, right? Theft, gezel, means that a non-Jew shouldn't steal another non-Jew's property. Dinim refers to a non-financial sort of theft. All right, that's one option. Option number two, which I think is more convincing, is that gezel means that it is inherently prohibited for any non-Jew to steal another non-Jew's property. That is prohibited at all times and in all societies. Okay, no one can ever come around, no non-Jewish society, according to the Torah, can come around and say we're allowing stealing. So theft is always prohibited. Now, there are other laws, like let's say the laws of damages, okay? The laws of, there's all sorts of other financial laws which are open to interpretation, right? Different societies can govern themselves different ways, however they choose. So the laws of dinim are that there are all sorts of other financial laws, right? In other words, let's say two people make a deal, right? Are they allowed to absolve that deal, right? Can they dissolve a partnership? So that's not a traditional form of theft. So each society is allowed to decide for themselves how to regulate that. So that's what dinim means, that even though non-Jews are not allowed to steal from one another, but they do have some flexibility in how they determine the laws, the secular financial laws that should govern them. And again, like I said, right, that's basically what we have in the United States today. All right, so just to summarize quickly, basically we have two approaches. Why did the sons of Yaakov, why did Shimon and Levi think they could kill the people of Shechem? So either one option is because they had violated one of the 7 mitzvos of non-Jews. According to the Rambam, the people had all violated the law of dinim because they didn't enforce the laws against Shechem, the other 6. According to the Ramban, they violated idolatry or adultery. The other major approach is that according to the Ramban, the sons of Yaakov did something wrong, and it was motivated by passion and anger. Now, the second issue that we discussed is, what does it mean dinim, right? What does it mean laws? So according to the Rambam, it means to enforce the other 6, which means everyone in town is responsible for anyone that violates one of the other 6. Whereas according to the Ramban, it means to have a governing financial laws, which are a little bit different or go beyond the other mitzvah, the other prohibition of theft. All right, so that's where we'll call that discussion here.